Here in British Columbia, innovation is everywhere. From how we engage with natural resources to evolving transportation and creating industry defining technologies. BC innovators are putting their mark on tomorrow and addressing the crucial social, economic, and environmental challenges we face around the world. And at Innovate BC, we help foster the ideas and solutions emerging out of our province so that all British Columbians can benefit from a thriving and inclusive innovation economy. So, what does that mean? We are champions of innovation and changemakers, relationship builders and community connectors, drivers of ecosystem data and storytellers. We work to create more opportunities for everyone to participate in our innovation ecosystem, working with strategic partners in BC and beyond. And our programs are designed to connect innovators to the resources they need to succeed. Looking to start and scale your business? Or learn how to navigate human resources, digital marketing, or intellectual property? We'll connect you with experts in your field and mentors to help your business grow. Need funding? Our grant programs can help you hire talent, commercialize your research, and validate your technology. Searching for innovative solutions to your most pressing challenges? Tap into our network of BC's most promising innovators and solution providers. We help companies large and small across industries drive innovation forward because BC is the best place to start, grow, and invest for tomorrow. Begin today and grow your idea with us. Innovate BC.
Well, awesome. Well, welcome everybody. I hope that you are well. I really am appreciating the gorgeous weather we're having here in Misquachie, Waskagan, so Edmonton, Treaty 6 territory. My name is Michelle. This is where I'm joining from today, and it is a beautiful day to be part of Creators World. So I hope you feel the same way. So you've joined us here on, it is Wednesday. You've joined us. I saw that comment, Ken. You have joined us today. We also wanted to just to acknowledge the people who, or the organizations who really have supported these webinars. Innovate BC is one of them, Can Do. And here it is all about building that capacity. So I am honored to introduce our guest speaker. But before we get into that, I always find that it's a good time to just take a moment, press pause. Life, I know, is busy for all of us. There's so much going on, but just take a moment, press pause, plant both feet on the ground, take a deep breath, and just acknowledge one thing that you're grateful for today. I was out there driving on the roads in Misquachie, Waskagan, and my gas tank was on empty, and so I had to go fuel up, and the gas prices have changed. Now, we could complain about that, or we could be thankful that we have the capacity to drive our vehicles, to fill our gas tank. So there's always something to be thankful for. And that was one of my things. I just honored that moment that I'm here filling up my car with gas. And as small as it is, as simple as it is, that gratitude really created a moment of goodness and a reminder that, we are part of goodness. We're part of Creator's world. And we have capacity to live and walk and follow follow our dreams, follow those ambitions that we have in our lives and in our hearts, to do what we're meant to do in Creator's world. So gratitude, always be thankful for all of those gifts that have been given to us throughout our day. All right, so today you've joined a presentation with Farm Credit Canada Indigenous Procurement Program. So last week we had the pleasure, I believe it was Chelsea was with us, and she was talking about the internship of Farm Credit Canada, and it was phenomenal. It was inspiring. I really believe it's just what our young people need. Mentorship is so important, and also building capacity within the young people as well. So if you missed that presentation, Can Do has a whole library of resources, of webinars, so you can always catch that on the replay. All right, so today we have Mike with us, and Mike is joining us from Regina, Saskatchewan. Mike is the manager, the special projects at the FCC. His role is focused on ensuring that FCC builds upon a responsible procurement philosophy that identifies and mitigates risks associated with environmental, social, and governance issues. Strategic priorities related to ESG in FCC's supply chain include the maturation of FCC's Indigenous Procurement Program, accessibility within the supply chain, the prevention of forced labor and child labor in FCC's supply chain, and reduction of FCC's operational carbon footprints. So he has been with FCC for just under 5 years and has over 20 years of experience in procurement and supply chain management. So he holds a supply chain management professional designation, I have to say that slow, and a Bachelor of Science degree majoring in finance. In his spare time, he coaches his son's hockey team, follows his 15-year-old son around the province, watching him play hockey, and is usually at the rink himself trying to fit in his own hockey game. All those little gratitudes that bring joy to our heart, hey? All right, so we're really honored that you're here, Mike, just to enlighten us, to present what is going on in your neck of the woods. We thank you for being here, and we thank all of our guests for joining us this afternoon. So, Mike, I'm passing this off to you.
Great, thanks, Michelle, and Tara, thanks for having us. I just want to start by saying I'm going to hit share here, but super excited to be here today, and this is kind of our first opportunity to get out and tell people about our program. So I'm excited for the opportunity. And as I'm getting things set up here, I'll maybe invite Audrey. I don't want to put you on the spot, but Audrey Molesky, our Director of Procurement, is with us today as well. I don't know if you wanted to say hello, Audrey.
Sorry, getting technology. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having us. We're super excited, as Mike said, to share our program with you and looking for feedback all of the time, right, that we can incorporate and improve on what we do. And just, getting out there to meet some different folks across the country is a great opportunity as well.
Yeah, it's an exciting time at FCC, and actually, and I've had a title change since I sent you that bio, and I'm actually now the manager of sustainable procurement at FCC. So still encompassing everything that we talked about from this Indigenous Procurement Program that we're looking to grow, and also everything around accessibility, environmental, social, and governance type of concerns in supply chain. So busy time, exciting time, and looking forward to it. So thank you. I'm going to start out just with a quick land acknowledgement. So I recognize that FCC teams spread far and wide across Canada, where we have 70 treaties with a mixture of Indigenous culture and heritage throughout the true north. Here in Regina, where I presently reside, we are situated on the traditional lands referred to as Treaty 4 territory, the original lands of the Cree, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota, and the homeland of the Métis. I am grateful to work and to play and to live on this great land. Truth and reconciliation is a time in history where so many people are entering times of learning, while others are reopening wounds that are reopened, and that were left by the genocide of our Canadian history. Wherever you are in your truth and reconciliation journey, I encourage you to keep leaning into the journey and invite you to share your experience and learnings with your teammates and colleagues to keep the knowledge flowing. And I personally, I love this slide. This is one of my favorite slides that we have, similar to that other background that we saw from the other gentleman there. So in terms of our agenda today, we're going to start with just an overview of who FCC, who we are, what we typically do in terms of our procurement and how we operate as a company. And then we're going to talk about our Indigenous Procurement Program and get more into the program itself, talking about our vision, the objectives of the program, and how we aim to succeed. And from there, we'll go over where to find our procurement opportunities. So some information for everybody on where to find our opportunities, and then how to best respond to a procurement opportunity from FCC. And then at the end, we have a resource page as well at the end of the presentation with links to different tools that are available to go and look at that are available on our webpage. And we'll ensure that the presentation is shared out with everybody at the end of the session today. Please feel free to ask questions along the way as well, or hold off till the end. I'll just need somebody to let me know if there's a question that comes in. So who is FCC? So led by our president and CEO, Justine Hendricks, FCC is a federal crown corporation reporting to Canadians and Parliament through the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. Really simplified, we're like a bank. We lend money in the ag sector. So we provide flexible financing, expert business management software, information and knowledge to more than 102,000 customers across Canada, of which they include primary producers and agribusiness and agri-food operators who provide inputs or add value to the agriculture and food industry. We're a team of more than 2,300 employees operating in 103 offices located primarily in rural Canada, and our corporate office in Regina, Saskatchewan. So a little bit about our supply chain. So as I mentioned, we're basically like a bank where we're lending money. Our supply chain is typical of a financial institution. So we're procuring primarily IT hardware, software, professional services. I mentioned the 103 buildings that we lease office space from across Canada. So we've got leases as well as leasehold improvements. So construction, drywalling, office furniture, any equipment, office supplies as well, and then office furnishings as well. So as a public entity, FCC is subject to 3 trade agreements. The Canada and European Union Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, there's a lot to that, that's CETA. The Canadian Free Trade Agreement, CFTA, and then the Canada and United Kingdom Trade Continuity Agreement. And as part of our obligations to Indigenous peoples under the Canadian Constitution, Canada retains policy flexibility, as well as FCC does, to create or maintain programs or set-asides that seek to advance the interest of Indigenous peoples and the Indigenous-owned businesses, including in the areas of services, investment, environment, government procurement, and state-owned enterprises. So take that all to mean we do have flexibility within our policies to be able to create set-asides and work exclusively within Indigenous businesses. And that's part of what we're trying to do as we continue to grow and mature our program here. So in terms of procurement at FCC and how it works, FCC does have a link to our external webpage titled Procurement on our external website, which can be found at www.fcc.ca. That's open to any new or existing vendor to be able to visit to learn more about our procurement practices. Within that webpage that we have, there are different sections on the page, and I'll kind of highlight some of the key areas in there. But the first section that's important, we do have our procurement and vendor management policy on there that highlights FCC's procurement decisions that are governed by a set of controls and policies to support fair consideration of suppliers and appropriate risk management for FCC and its shareholder. And as I mentioned, there's also a link to our procurement policy on the website. Exciting news for us, our competitive procurement threshold was just raised up to $200,000. So that means that any contract with an estimated value of $200,000 or more requires a competition. And below that, we can direct award to companies or hold smaller competitions if we so feel, but it's not as a stringent a process for contracts that are under 200K. So when we talk about holding competitions, they could be closed competitions or they could be posted publicly. And where we have enough qualified vendors, we will look to issue closed competitions to Indigenous vendors only. So again, we want to be able to provide that opportunity to Indigenous vendors where we can. And a big piece of that for us is getting a good understanding internally of what's coming up when, so that we can get out proactively and meet and talk to vendors so we can start to build those relationships. The next section is around third-party risk management. So effective procurement and third-party risk management practices ensures that controls are in place for Farm Credit Canada to make sure we're obtaining value for our money when procuring goods and services, that we apply fairness and transparency in our procurement decisions, that we manage our vendor relationships and mitigate risks where they are present. So we have a big focus on third-party risk management at FCC, ensuring again that any risks that are out there that are present are effectively mitigated. And those could be reputational risks, those could be risks related to financial viability as well. So we do a good job of ensuring that we're managing the complexities of the contracts and the vendors in such a way to mitigate our risks there. We also utilize the Government of Canada's integrity regime for contracts over $10,000 to ensure that we conduct business with ethical suppliers in Canada and abroad. And we work with the Government of Canada to ensure that we foster those ethical business practices, ensure due process for suppliers, and uphold the public trust in the procurement process. We also have a supplier code of conduct that outlines the minimum standards that FCC expects of its suppliers, including suppliers providing goods or services that don't require formal contracts. So some key areas on that include the details on our responsible procurement philosophy, managing real or perceived conflicts of interest, a section on anti-bribery and anti-corruption, and then compliance with human rights standards and environmental legislation, ensuring companies have business continuity plans, and then disclosure requirements. And then also on the website, we have a section related to health and safety protocols that just outlines for everybody's well-being that employees, contractors, consultants, and suppliers all adhere to local, provincial, and federal laws and safety guidelines throughout any work that's construction related. So a little bit about our Indigenous Procurement Program. So developing our program began when working with an Indigenous consulting firm, Rise Consulting, and they're out of BC. So together we developed our strategy for development of our program, which focused on industry research and benchmarking other similar programs. So we put a lot of time and effort in ensuring that we were going down the path that others before us have gone. Groups like Canada Post, certainly SaskPower in Saskatchewan is a strong program as well. And so we wanted to learn from them and also get feedback from other Indigenous leaders. We talked to some local leaders in Saskatchewan, Indigenous leaders in Saskatchewan about the program, and certainly got feedback along the way as we put our targets together and built the strategy. So we wanted to ensure that, when we were looking to understand the appropriate way to identify and verify Indigenous vendors, identify existing Indigenous vendors within our supply chain, and then setting those programs and metrics, that we were doing it correctly and making sure that we had good buy-in from the community. We also work to speak with Indigenous suppliers, working with FCC, so existing suppliers that we work with, to understand their experiences and where barriers were to successfully winning contracts with FCC. And then in November, we also issued a survey to over 150 prospective vendors to explain our program and to understand, again, any barriers that exist, not only with FCC, but in public procurement. Again, with the goal of amending any policies or practices so that we can make it easier and more efficient for businesses to be successful. So as you see, our vision is to be a leader in promoting and encouraging the economic growth of Indigenous businesses, communities, and peoples in alignment with the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada. So a little bit about our objectives. At FCC, we recognize our procurement can play an important role in providing value and opportunities to Indigenous peoples, and we built our program to support economic growth for Indigenous-owned businesses, communities, and peoples, achieve greater inclusiveness throughout the FCC supply chain, provide guidance to Indigenous vendors, and promote Indigenous inclusiveness, labor, and skill development with both Indigenous and non-Indigenous vendors. We will succeed on this program through building meaningful relationships. I think I mentioned that earlier. That was a very key learning that we had early on. We recognized the need to get out, have people understand, have companies understand who FCC is, who we are about, what we do, what our values are. And we recognize the importance of doing that with all Indigenous vendors, communities, and people. We've set procurement targets related to spend with Indigenous companies, as well as volume of contracts and the number of vendors with contracts that we will achieve and reassess once we've hit the target. So being really clear about this, we've set a target in terms of spend, but once we hit that target, we're going to reassess and we're going to continue to push it. And so our initial target is for 5% of our overall spend. But once we hit that target, we are going to assess it. And I think what we're calling it is milestone 2. We're going to reset it and move it up to 8%. And then once we hit the 8, we'll look at it again and reassess and continue to push to grow. So we're not creating a cap. We are just setting a minimum standard that we want to hit and that we'll continue to assess and look to grow over time. One of the other things we're going to obviously do, and this is a big piece of what we're doing today, is execute on our outreach program, where we'll seek to understand barriers that exist to working with FCC and ensuring Indigenous vendors understand where to locate our opportunities and how to effectively respond to them. And then we've also gone ahead and adjusted our RFP bid scoring methodology, and I'll talk about that more in the next slide, to include weightings for Indigenous business ownership, as well as Indigenous awareness and inclusion within their business. So the change that we made related to our RFP, and happy to announce that we put this in place for all of our RFPs in February. And so anything new that's coming out now, you will see that there's an evaluation criteria related to Indigenous ownership and inclusion. So 5% related to Indigenous ownership and control, as well as 5% for workplace and supply chain policies. And so as part of determining that business ownership piece, vendors will be asked to declare as an Indigenous owned and controlled business. And I'll talk about that a little bit on our next slide. And then the workforce and supply chain policies section of the evaluation focuses on businesses, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, that have recruitment and retention programs for Indigenous talent, supply chain initiatives to increase spend with Indigenous businesses, existing partnerships with Indigenous businesses, nations, or communities, and then existing community investment programs as well. So this is really just us pushing the envelope in terms of the businesses that we contract with having the same values as FCC. We want to be able to recognize companies that do and be able to provide benefit in the evaluations for them. So I spoke a little bit earlier on that last slide about Indigenous business declaration and verification. So we do provide an opportunity for companies that wish to become a verified Indigenous business to submit a declaration form. So the benefits of becoming a verified Indigenous business with us is that you automatically will receive that 5% evaluation weighting score on competitive RFPs. That's number one. Number two, we're going to get to know you and start to build that relationship, get an understanding of what areas of business that you operate in and where we may be able to work together. And then also, you only have to submit that form once. And then once verified, we maintain our list of verified vendors and recertify vendors every 3 years. And that'll be us proactively coming to you to ask whether or not anything's changed in terms of your business ownership. Won't need to submit the forms again. One of the things that we really went back and forth on a lot as we developed the program was the idea and the notion of certification, verification, and auditing. And we talked to a lot of Indigenous businesses, a lot of Indigenous people about the whole notion of having a company who says they are Indigenous owned, having to prove that they're Indigenous owned. And we went back and forth quite a bit about whether it was appropriate. And we did decide to ensure that verification piece, either through being on another verified database, so the Indigenous Business Directory ran by the Government of Canada. Maybe Candu's got a business membership where they're doing verification and auditing as well that we can refer to, or even another entity like CCAB's business membership as well. And so we did decide to go ahead with that certification and verification just for the integrity of the program, but also, and I think more importantly, to protect Indigenous businesses and ensure that, you know, the companies that we're giving benefit to are who they say they are. So where to find our procurement opportunities? So as part of our strategy to simplify and streamline the procurement process, we have joined MERX, a leader in providing secure and transparent access to RFPs and tenders, allowing suppliers to compete through its electronic bidding portal. To access upcoming tenders, FCC invites all potential suppliers to register online with MERX. At the end of this, on the resource slide, we do have a link to MERX, as well as the resources they have for getting set up and how to utilize their software. So it provides the ability for vendors to download the RFP document, allows for easy submission of questions, and provides a singular place to locate all information related to the procurement opportunity. And it also allows vendors to easily upload proposals for FCC to be able to receive and evaluate the responses. And then for any procurement opportunities that are above those trade agreement thresholds that I mentioned earlier, or that we want to be open to a broader number of vendors, can also be found on the Government of Canada's electronic bidding portal, Canadifies. So wanted to talk a little bit about how to respond to a FCC procurement opportunity, and I always say how to put your best foot forward. So a little bit here about what we typically issue for procurement competitions. Almost predominantly, you would see requests for proposals or RFPs be our type of procurement opportunity that we issue. And an RFP is a document that typically identifies and describes a need, and that indicates that proposals are being sought from qualified vendors. It will describe the need in detail, the evaluation criteria, the weightings that will be used to evaluate responses, and identify the preferred vendors, and will outline the bidding process and contract terms. Now, some of the important considerations for vendors, and I can't stress some of these enough, ask questions. If you see something that doesn't make sense, don't hesitate to submit a question to the procurement lead on the project. It helps you gain clarity on any aspect of the RFP, from the scope to the evaluation criteria, to the proposal instructions, and then any contract terms. Also important to review the key dates in the schedule, in the RFP schedule. So when is the question period open for? When is the RFP closing date and time? When do we plan on awarding? That sort of thing. And then next, focus on the evaluation criteria and make sure that your submitted proposal includes details that can be used to evaluate each evaluation criteria listed in the RFP. So if we're evaluating on, let's say, company experience in a particular category, list your company's experience on similar type of projects so that we can assess that and get an understanding of your experience in that area so that we can adequately score you. Just don't say, yes, we've done a lot of work in this area, and you know, without that level of detail, it becomes very difficult to be able to match and to be able to score those scores. So ensure you're answering, you're providing details, I should say, on all of the criteria. And we list the weightings of the evaluation criteria. So if anything's weighted highly, you want to provide the most amount of detail you can in there. The next area I would suggest is to format the content of your proposal to match the proposal's instruction section. It just makes it that much easier for our evaluation teams to be able to go through your proposal, organize the information so that we can score it adequately. And then a couple late ones, ensure all the questions that are listed in the RFP are answered. And if you're unsure, ask. If you don't know how to answer a piece, just ask the question, and we certainly are here to help out to get that clarity for you. And then last and not least, but probably the most critical, ensure your proposal submitted on time. Pay attention, as I mentioned, to that those key dates in the RFP schedule. Any late submissions, the Merck software actually doesn't allow them to be submitted. And that's the worst and the last thing that we want to see as the procurement owner. So we still realize there's a ton of work for us to do on this program. And, it really starts with building new relationships like we're hoping to do today. And that's really going to be key to seeing progress in our program. A few of the things that we're working on over the next year and quarter as we move forward. Our first formal FCC-led outreach session we're planning for June 12th. And as I mentioned, this is kind of our dry run at it. So interested in getting feedback from everybody at the end of this on how it was. We've set that target date of June 12th for our first session. Again, it'll be similar to this one, but at that time we'll have more information to share and more detail. Information related to our spend targets. As I mentioned, we do have targets and metrics that are related to spend. We're just in the process of pulling that spend data right now. But what's encouraging for us is that the spend that we had with Indigenous vendors 2 years ago looks to be significantly larger, even last fiscal, which is fantastic news. And we're going to look to again push the envelope even more so moving into this fiscal. Another key aspect that we want to move forward with is proactively assessing our upcoming contract opportunities far enough in advance to be able to locate and again build relationships with Indigenous businesses so that we can work with them to be successful in attaining FCC contracts. And so when I talk about that, I talk about, if we know that, we're going to be doing leasehold improvements in our Brooks, Alberta office. I'm not even sure if we have an office there. I'll just use Brooks as an example. We want to be able to get out in advance far enough to be able to find who the generals are out there, any Indigenous businesses out there that we can work with directly, be it electricians, plumbers, drywallers, painters, whatever it is, so that we can start to again build those relationships far enough in advance and allow the businesses the time to prepare themselves for when we're ready to go to market and start to award contracts. Additionally, we're going to continue to enhance the information that we release on our website, and we want to be transparent with our program goals and targets. So you're going to see over the course of the next year, we're going to start to publish our program metrics and targets just for visibility and transparency into what we're doing and where we're at to be able to push ourselves to again meet those targets as we move forward. So in terms of the resources, these are some of the resources I talked about throughout the program or throughout the presentation. So our main procurement page on our FCC website. And then within there, we've got our link to our Indigenous Business Declaration form, and then some information on Merck. So where to find the contracts, but then their resources about how to find, bid, and win on business opportunities. And then a link to the Canada Buys, the federal government's electronic tendering portal. And that is it. That is all I had for today. Hopefully that was good and we didn't go too fast, but certainly open to any questions anybody has.
Thank you so much, Mike, for your thoughtful presentation. I can really appreciate the intention and the inclusion of Indigenous peoples and organizations and nations to what this organization is doing. So I can honor that. So thank you. June 12th. Look forward to hearing about that.
I wonder, can we, I'm going to figure out how I'm going to stop sharing here because I can't see anybody. Is there an opportunity for us to advertise that opportunity with your association?
I'm sure there is, Tara. I'm sure there is, yes.
Okay.
We're going to open the floor for any questions. Come on in. We'd love to hear from you all. You can also put the questions in the chat box if you're shy. But yeah, this is a great opportunity to bring those questions to the table today. And the one thing that I appreciated also in your presentation is just get the conversation started, get the dialogue happening, ask the questions, be curious. I think that that's really important as well. So any questions?
Yeah, definitely. And I believe there's some feedback, a feedback survey or questionnaire that goes back after this. We'd love to hear from people. Again, not hoping, we will have more, I'd say more detail in our June presentation that we're going to give, and we'll be able to talk and show more about where we're at in terms of the program over the past year and some of the successes that we've had. I can talk really quickly about some of the successes we've had over the past year too. We are actually leasing our first building on Indigenous land out in Truro, Nova Scotia at Millbrook with Millbrook First Nation, which provides a ton of benefits for us. And it's a perfect location, and it's been a great relationship and a great start working with them. And we're actively searching for other locations as well throughout Canada right now. So some good opportunities there. We've had some really good success with some local Saskatchewan-based IT consulting companies as well, professional consulting companies, where our spend has really gone up with them over the past year. And I think I mentioned throughout the presentation, that's a big area of focus for us is IT consulting, service providers. I know there are third-party software providers as well that can provide some licenses. We're open to having those discussions with companies and how we transition some of that work over.
Yeah, and I think it's great to note on the IT side of things. The one company that we were dealing with didn't actually have a lot of experience in some of the modules, and so what we did is we connected them with one of our other third parties to be able to do some mentorship from that perspective, so that they could learn and grow, right? Because it's not just about looking for the areas where maybe there's a strong presence, but it's looking to be able to grow in some of those other areas where maybe Indigenous businesses are underrepresented.
Mm-hmm.
So.
That's great. It's all about, I believe, well, not all about, but a big part of this is about building that capacity, and mentorship is huge in
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great, which
Yeah.
is why I love your internship program.
Yes.
I will plug that.
I was saying before everybody got on that we had a great young student a couple of years ago who I need to connect back with because he was such a good kid, and everybody who engaged him had very positive outcomes and relationships and discussions with him. And yeah, really good kid, and I hope he's doing well. I'd love to get him back with us someday.
Okay, we have a question from Ken. So have you considered giving Indigenous the incumbent advantages? I see you are giving Indigenous firms at least a year notice. Have you considered using target pricing so that Indigenous firms have an idea of the pricing range?
No, you know what, and that is an interesting concept for sure. We haven't considered something like that today, but I'd be interested in learning maybe a little bit more about that, Ken, if you'd want to connect to talk about that, because there is certainly benefits in that, and I know certainly with our incumbent vendors, they would have somewhat of an inherent advantage. And certainly the Indigenous ones would as well, because they would have an understanding about relationships that are already built. We know what their pricing is, and they probably would have won some level of competition prior to that. But interesting in maybe understanding a little bit more about that, Ken, at some point, if you ever wanted to connect on that.
It's Ken. I was just from your presentation, I was just thinking of the incumbent has a number of advantages, and one of them that you have addressed. I'm not sure how much notice you're giving the Indigenous firms, but if they don't know it's coming up,
Yeah.
when it comes out, when it comes on Merck's, and I think Merck's is what they want 40 days.
Yeah.
40 days is not a long time.
No.
You get ready and put all your ducks in a row and talk to subcontractors and
Yeah.
find equipment, et cetera, et cetera. So you need to be talking to Indigenous firms at least a year ahead of time, depending on this, the extent of the extent of the contract. The other thing that came to mind was the pricing. I've had Indigenous firms contact me and said, well, what should I bid? Well, you know what? If I would have put a target price, it could be just my wish list. I mean, I could have been out in La La Land. But if I go too low, I'm going to scare off my incumbent because he's saying, well, wait a minute, you're paying me more than that now. Now you want to, but giving it a realistic target pricing will get other people involved and say, can I do it for that? How can I do it for that? And maybe I'm missing something here. So, but there's a whole list of incumbent advantages, and if you give those incumbent advantages to the Indigenous, they have a chance to even do better than your incumbents. So anyway, just a thought in passing. I don't have any secret formula, but target pricing is one, and I'm not the expert. So.
No, I certainly appreciate that. And I couldn't agree more that us being proactive in our approach is going to be key to that. And Audrey will be the first one to tell you, I've been talking about that for 5 years, that we need better visibility far enough out in advance to be able to get out onto the streets, to be able to go and now meet Indigenous vendors so that, again, we can grow those relationships, get an understanding of capabilities so that they know far enough out in advance, okay, this is a $1 million project, they're going to need this much, these many contractors, these many workers and laborers to be able to bid on that work even. And so that is key for us. And that's a big part of what we have to move forward in. That is key to success in our program. And we were even talking last week about the potential to, if we get more visibility into what's there, in terms of what's coming up, to be able to post those opportunities so people can look at it anytime.
It's Ken again. Just one more comment. I'm not sure what your length of contracts are, but if you're asking somebody to get into a new startup, if you're asking somebody to get involved in the business and come in with a good price, they need to have a long enough contract to be able to go to the bank to get the money and to get other people, subcontractors, interested in it. You're probably talking 5 years plus, maybe even longer, depending on the type of contract.
For sure. And we've got the flexibility, I think, to look at those and really dig into what appropriate timelines are and work with companies on that. Typically, our contracts are 5 years in length, but would we look at opportunities? I don't think we would say no to look at longer opportunities when they're out there for the appropriate reasons, for sure.
Well, thank you, Ken. Always bring in the questions and the curiosity in the comments. Thank you so much, Ken, for coming on in this conversation. I think one thing that you had talked about, Mike, that I actually wrote down earlier in my notes, is that it's really about the building that relationship. And that's so key. And when I think about the reconciliation, the calls to action, I really believe it is about connecting and building relationships and growing the relationship with one another. So I again, honor that, that intention that is there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Oh, here's a question from Vicky. Does wild rice harvesting fall under agriculture?
I'm going to say it would. I don't work on the lending side, but I 99.9% sure it would. For sure. Is that something we would lend money for? I believe FCC would for that. Audrey, you think so?
I think so as well. Where it's vineyards, it's fisheries, it's all types of different crops. And I know that we've been looking through our Indigenous relations group as to traditional and that kind of stuff as well. So I'm guessing yes. I don't have a definitive yes to that, but yeah.
All right. So I did check out your website when you were presenting. So it's fcc.ca. Perhaps that's a good place to put that question to, Vicky. Or is there a specific person that you could recommend she have that conversation with?
Mike, I think you could take it away, actually.
I was just going to suggest that.
Yeah. We don't want to send you on the runaround. Why don't we do a little bit of running around first, and then we probably can get back to you with a more definitive answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And there's her email.
Perfect.
Okay, any other questions? The floor is open. Now is your chance. This is actually our last webinar Wednesday. We're still here for Innovate BC on Tuesdays, but this is a great opportunity to ask the questions. Okay, well, we thank our guest speakers being here. We really honor your intention and what you are doing. So the Farm Credit Canada, Mike, and Audrey, we thank you so much for being here. I know time is valuable, so we really honor that you have come to present and educate us. And thank you all for our guests for being here. Thank you for showing up today's webinar. So we thank you for being here. We hope you have a good rest of the day, a good rest of the week, and continue to do whatever it is you're doing in Creators World. So take care, everybody.
Yes, thank you, everyone.
Thank you.